that she was hunting for a man in England from 2013 onwards, when her marriage had crashed and she couldn't find anyone in Canada at the time. And she wanted wealth and she wanted fame.
Meghan was clawing her way to the top by hunting down powerful men, and now Tom Bower has exposed every last one. From a professional football star she aggressively chased to famous singers who read her texts but never bothered to reply. Every last one of these targets had the same specific thing: she was after power status, a ladder to climb. Every calculated move Meghan made to get close to these men is now laid bare, and what she did might actually turn your stomach, because Prince Harry is not even the most shocking name on that secret list. I am sorry, honey, of course I choose you. Right, she studied his entire life before they ever met. What if the exact moment Harry claims he knew she was the one had nothing to do with destiny? What if it was not magic? What if this whole fairy tale was just a trap, and Harry walked straight into it smiling? Let that sink in for a second, because once you hear the details Tom Bower uncovered, you will never look at this royal love story the same way again. Days before Meghan ever showed up to that blind date with Prince Harry, she was not nervous. She was not just picking out some outfit and hoping for the best. She locked herself in her room and worked, and if someone dared to knock on that door, God help them. She would snap eyes wide, voice razor sharp, a deep-seated fury that was incredibly focused and completely terrifying. She was deep in her research, sitting down and combing through every single piece of public information on Prince Harry. She tracked his unhealed grief over Diana and his well-documented history of deep, aching loneliness within the palace walls. She analysed his desperate hunger for a woman who would choose him, not the crown, not the title, just him. The broken, searching man underneath all that royal armour. This was not a reading list born out of simple curiosity. She was studying him to build something entirely new, crafting a version of herself customised specifically for him piece by piece, wound by matching wound. She carefully studied his key passions: Africa animals, charity, emotional vulnerability, and Diana. There are even strange reports claiming she used a whiteboard and marker to organise her notes. She did not walk into that blind date hoping they would click. She stepped into that room knowing precisely where to press, and Harry fell hard. He admitted it himself proudly, like a man who had witnessed a miracle on their very first date. He knew she was the one. Now consider the question Tom Bower raises: how does any woman make a prince feel that absolute in a single evening, that fast? The answer Bower gave is not fate. It is not natural chemistry. It is a single-word preparation. She came prepared, and the rabbit hole goes much deeper than that. That blind date itself was no accident. Bower alleges Meghan had already targeted one of Harry's close childhood friends, someone Harry trusted implicitly. She deliberately built a bond with this insider specifically to engineer their first introduction, mapping a strategic route to the prince through his inner circle, walking it step by step. To truly grasp how calculated this plan was, we have to look much further back in her past. Back when she was filming Suits, Meghan maintained a mood board in her private study filled with images. Royalty, luxury, and grand palaces, but if anyone walked in unexpectedly, her calm composure would crack instantly. Her hands would shoot forward. Her eyes would widen as she grabbed things, shifting, stepping sideways to block that board, as if her very life depended on it. And if it was already too late, if they had caught a glimpse of it, she would force a nervous laugh, claiming the board was just for her lifestyle blog, simple fashion inspiration, nothing serious. Move along. But it was not about fashion, because those pinned images were not just random palaces and shining tiaras. Sources claim that several of those photos were specifically focused on Princess Diana. Not Diana, the fashion icon, but Diana the martyr, the wronged outsider, the woman the royal household tried to crush but failed. The beloved global humanitarian who defied the institution, the people's princess, representing the perfect narrative of a pure woman, destroyed by a cold, merciless system. Biographers suggest Meghan did not simply want to marry a prince, she desperately wanted to inherit Diana's tragic legacy. If that theory holds true, absolutely nothing that followed was an accident. Not the explosive Oprah interview, not the Spencer necklace worn like a banner, and not every deliberate parallel drawn between their mutual suffering. All of it was supposedly the flawless execution of a blueprint mapped out in Toronto long before Harry even knew her name. And then there were the online articles. On her own lifestyle blog, Meghan had once written about Kate's royal wedding with what seemed like deep, genuine warmth. She spoke of Diana with heavy emotion, praising the magical aspects of royal life in a way that sounded far from casual. No, they read like calculated study notes, and the exact moment her romance with Harry went public, something highly suspicious happened. Those posts vanished instantly, completely scrubbed, but the internet never truly forgets. Screenshots were saved, archived pages survived, and everyone kept asking the exact same question. Why does a woman delete every single word she ever wrote about the royal family the very second she marries into it? Yet those scrubbed blog posts were barely the start of the firestorm. Rumours that tore through the internet in 2026 claimed Prince Harry was never actually the royal target she had in mind. One deeply troubling theory just kept resurfacing. Long before Prince Harry entered her life, it was William who first caught her eye, Prince William, the future king. But William was already locked tight inside his secure marriage to Catherine and their young family, leaving no open doors. So her focus shifted down one branch of the family tree to Harry. He was the far more accessible prince, lonely, vulnerable, with his old emotional wounds, bleeding right out in the open, waiting for someone to heal them. Some royal insiders called it exactly like it was labelling Harry as nothing more than her fallback option. It is easily one of the darkest accusations in this entire story, and it deserves to feel exactly as heavy as it sounds. Royal biographer Tom Bower chased this story down. But as he prepared to publish his findings, something highly unusual went down behind closed doors. For 2 long years he shielded a key source, an insider who had navigated these royal circles, witnessed things firsthand and spoken carefully. Then suddenly that contact reached out to Bower in absolute genuine terror. The person was shaking. Meghan's public relations team had reportedly tracked them down and begun sniffing around their career, making highly suspicious inquiries through mutual connections and asking very pointed questions about what secrets this person might be sharing with journalists. To the source, it felt like being watched, as if a bright spotlight had suddenly flashed inside a room they believed was completely secure and private. Right then, Bower reportedly made a definitive call. If Meghan was willing to target private citizens to cover up her history, then that history had to be exposed before anyone else suffered to keep it buried. He claimed she forced his hand. Her aggressive move did not stop the expose, it practically guaranteed it would happen. Caught in the crossfire was Harry, a prince who completely scorched his own royal life to protect this bond, genuinely believing he had found a woman who saw him for who he was. Not just the royal title, but the actual deeply wounded, searching human being hidden underneath. Bower claims that the woman Harry sacrificed everything for had mapped out his deepest psychological scars, perfectly moulding her personality to fit his pain. Yet the most terrifying and lingering question over their entire love story simply refuses to go away. When Harry felt that intense, overwhelming connection on their very first date, feeling truly seen for once, was that real, genuine love? Or was it a flawless, highly calculated performance, engineered strictly for a target audience of one? Of course, Harry was not the first man to learn this painful lesson. He was merely the latest partner left, sitting alone in an empty house. Years before Harry, there was Trevor. Producer Trevor Engelson married Meghan in 2011, believing in her talent and championing her career. He got her into industry rooms she could never access alone. But when she was done with him, he did not even get a proper breakup talk. Instead, he received a cold FedEx package in the mail containing her diamond wedding ring, sent back like a cheap borrowed prop she no longer needed. Friends who watched it happen used the exact same word to describe it: businesslike. Just like closing out an old bank account. That very evening, reports claim Meghan was hosting a lively party, Clinking glasses in a room packed with guests, champagne flowing, she threw her head back and laughed without a single care in the world. Witnesses say she looked radiant and fully alive, as though the absolute worst day of Trevor's life was somehow the happiest day of hers. And Trevor Engelson was hardly the only partner to get blindsided. Acclaimed chef Corey Vitiello would soon learn the exact same lesson. Corey Vitiello was a highly celebrated Toronto chef, a genuine self-made man who had built a thriving career and earned immense respect in his local community. He dated Meghan for 2 solid years, offering her his absolute devotion. She shared his home, his tight-knit social group, and his daily routine. To everyone watching, their partnership seemed stable, loving, and real, and from where Corey was standing, it truly was. Even during their final weeks together, Meghan kept playing the devoted partner at high-profile events, posing happily for the cameras. Friends who spent time with them back then noticed absolutely zero warning signs. She remained affectionate. Her warm gaze never wavered. Her daily behaviour was completely unchanged. There was not one icy look, not a single distant evening, absolutely nothing that could have warned Corey that he was about to be completely blindsided by her. And that brings us to the shocking claim Tom Bower repeatedly highlights. Meghan was still dating Corey when Prince Harry first asked for her phone number. Just look at the timeline. The intense preparation Meghan did before that famous blind date, studying Harry's vulnerabilities and mapping his psychological scars, did not happen after she walked out on Corey. It unfolded while they were still living together, while she was sitting at Corey's dining table, while simultaneously plotting a detailed emotional blueprint for another man mapping out exactly which buttons she wanted to push. Corey did not lose her because their relationship fell apart. He lost her because her next social climb was already running smoothly right under his nose. He was nothing more than the perfect screen while she started a brand new chapter, and he had absolutely no clue because she made sure he stayed blind. When the news finally broke and those headlines linking Meghan to Prince Harry splashed across every screen, Corey had to do something that quietly tears a person apart from the inside. He had to go back, sift through 2 whole years of shared memories, and recalculate every single moment. Friends close to Corey said he kept obsessing over one very specific night. She had cupped his face in her hands, looking straight into his eyes, asking if he could really survive without her. Corey felt something heavy drop in his chest. He told her no, he absolutely would not be okay, but she just stared at him with a soft look in her eyes and said simply, "You will." Corey's mind began to race. He lay awake all night wondering, was she sick? Had a doctor told her something? Was she caught up in some kind of trouble she was hiding from him? He held her much closer after that, becoming far more protective and attentive, watching her face constantly for signs of whatever storm was coming. It never once crossed his mind that she was actually preparing him for the exact day she would discard him entirely. And then came that infamous roasted chicken video. When Prince Harry and Meghan's engagement was announced to the world, they shared one detail meant to sound incredibly romantic. He had proposed to her while they were roasting a chicken together. Cosy, warm and domestic, a fairy tale with a humble kitchen right at the centre. Corey Vitiello, the man who had shared that exact kind of intimate evening with her, hundreds of times, who knew her movements in a kitchen, by heart quietly posted a video of chickens spinning slowly on a roasting spit. And right underneath he typed 3 simple words, "Never gets old." Those words were a sharp, painful wound, the only dignified response a man in his position could ever make publicly. Everything he was forced to keep quiet about, the overlapping timeline that made no sense, the shared home she just walked out of without a real goodbye, all of it was packed into those 3 words. Anyone who has ever loved someone who walked away without a clean, honest goodbye understood exactly the kind of pain he was carrying when he posted them. She mailed her ring back to Trevor. She abandoned Corey through global headlines. Different tactics, but the exact same outcome, and there are still plenty of other men. Author Tom Bower has the complete list, exposing every single name on her secret hit list. Meghan always followed a strict method. It started with a tailored compliment, something highly specific that made each man feel like she was truly focusing all her attention on him alone. Then came a targeted warmth, not basic friendliness, an allure tuned precisely to the exact kind of energy that specific man always responded to. If any door cracked open, she stepped right through it, and if it remained shut, she was already long gone before the silence even had time to turn awkward. The same calculated routine with a different man over and over again. Biographer Tom Bower has a very specific name for these encounters rehearsals. Each experience taught her something valuable about how these high society circles worked and how these wealthy men thought, and the targets receiving those messages never realized they were merely part of a dress rehearsal. They genuinely believed they were having a real conversation. That was always the massive difference between those men and her. 3 names leaked: Ashley Cole, Matt Cardle, and Max George. Cole was first in 2013. Back then, he was easily one of the most talked about famous athletes in England. He played for Chelsea and the England national team, dominating headlines for both his football skills and his chaotic personal life. His name alone generated endless tabloid buzz on a daily basis. Being spotted alongside Ashley Cole just one time, even if you were just captured in the background of the same party, meant the notorious British tabloids would immediately start printing your name. And once those London newspapers start printing your name, every exclusive door in celebrity society swings wide open. That was exactly what she wanted, not the man, but the brand. So she arranged a dinner with Lizzie Cundy, an incredibly well-connected British socialite who knew absolutely everyone worth knowing in London celebrity circles. Insiders claim that even before sitting down, she had asked if Lizzie had connections to any prominent professional soccer players. Lizzie said no, and the meeting never happened. Cole never knew she existed, leaving Meghan to head home completely empty-handed. That week, she was reportedly highly irritable, constantly snapping at everyone close to her. She also allegedly made a brutal cutting remark about Cole that revealed everything about how she processed being flat out denied something she deeply wanted. She refused to blame herself, she never did. Cole was clearly the one missing out, and that was exactly how she rationalized it. It was always her default mindset. By 2015, she turned her sights toward the British music industry, targeting Matt Cardle, an X Factor winner, with a solid profile and loyal fan base. She slipped directly into his messages, telling him she was a massive fan, and expressing hope that they could hook up the very next time she visited London. The text felt warm, deeply personal, and just genuine enough to pass for completely sincere, real-world admiration. Matt read the text and then did absolutely nothing. No reply, just total silence. Meghan felt absolutely zero embarrassment, none of that familiar sting of rejection that usually tightens in most people's chests after being completely ignored. In her mind, she was never the woman who got left on red. He was just some fool who failed to recognize exactly what was standing at his front door. Next, she jumped right to Max George International Success Constant Media Presence. The approach was entirely identical compliments. Warmth, casual suggestions to meet, and sources claim it was not a single message. It was actually multiple desperate messages across several weeks before Max's consistent lack of any real engagement let the whole thing quietly die out. Max confirmed it later, claiming it was nothing, absolutely nothing at all. He said back then he had a girlfriend, so it never went anywhere. But nothing is a highly loaded word when you really think about it carefully. Nothing means contact actually happened. Nothing means a conscious choice was made to keep it at nothing. And then years later, when Harry's face was plastered across every newspaper in the world, Max allegedly went somewhere his public interview did not show. He went back through those exact messages she sent, and he felt something he really struggled to name. He told someone close to him that the cold precision of those messages deeply unsettled him when he looked back at them. How specifically tailored they actually felt. How they hit notes that were highly particular to him rather than just generic flattery anyone might easily send. He said it made him look at Harry's face in those massive headlines differently than most other people did, like he was looking at a man who got that exact message. Except Max had a girlfriend and firmly kept the door shut. Harry had absolutely nothing standing between him and it. 3 men, 3 separate doors knocked on before she finally found the one that swung all the way open. And when Tom Bower started putting every single piece of this story into writing, the woman who had spent years keeping it all buried had to decide what she should do next. What she chose to do revealed far more about her than anything Bower had written. There was absolute panic and permanent damage. The exact moment Tom Bower's claims went wide, Meghan remained totally composed in public. Behind closed doors, however, she was falling apart. Her first calls went straight to the communications team. The absolute priority was containment. What could they deny? What could be reframed? What could be completely buried under enough counter-narrative before the brutal news cycle locked itself around the worst possible version of the story and stayed there? And when the people around her simply could not hand her the answers she needed, her anger came out ice cold. No screaming, no tears. Something harder and quieter than either of those things. You knew this was coming. Why was it not handled? 3 fronts opened up simultaneously. Intense legal pressure came first. Quiet intermediaries carried warnings that certain claims would be challenged extremely hard if they ever went to print. The actual goal was never necessarily to win in a courtroom. It was simply to make publication feel expensive enough that someone somewhere might decide the story was not worth it. Then came the sharp reputational signals. Various journalists and commentators known to be working in territory close to Bower started receiving very quiet indications that Meghan's team knew exactly who was involved and was keeping close track. The message underneath it had absolutely no ambiguity. Being too close to this story carried a major cost. Then came the source pressure. People believed to have spoken to Bower suddenly found themselves contacted through their professional networks. The overall framing was always casual social, but the questions being asked were completely surgical. What had been discussed, with whom, and when? Some of those people immediately went silent and stayed silent, but others did something very different. They went straight back to Bower and told him exactly what had just happened to them. And that, according to the accounts that followed, was the exact moment Bower understood this story was even bigger than he had ever realized. Because people who have absolutely nothing to hide simply do not run quiet secret operations against their own sources. Meghan did not just fail to stop the exposé, she actually triggered it. The aggressive pressure campaign she launched to protect her past was the very thing that convinced him that past needed to come out. To understand why this panic burned so incredibly hot, you must understand what Meghan was actually protecting. She was not some superstar whose secrets were suddenly threatening a glittering career. She was a woman who had hit her ceiling and known it for years. Suits was just a cable show filmed way up in Toronto. Before Harry, most people in England could not have picked her out of a lineup. Her uncle was a working television director while her aunt was an established actress. She had more industry connections than most struggling performers could ever dream of, yet she still could not break through into anything that mattered at a global level. That hit list was definitely not the behaviour of someone with endless options. It was the desperate behaviour of someone who understood the clock was running, and the next move absolutely had to count because there might not be another one. But all of that, the tough Hollywood ceiling, those deal or no deal years, and the 3 named men, the Corey overlap becomes something even heavier when you finally put it directly beside Harry. Really look at Harry. This is a man who loved completely and lost everything because of it. He did not simply drift away from his family. One by one he broke those close bonds and simply watched them crumble. He turned his back on his own country, walking away from the sole identity he had ever known. His military career was completely abandoned. That was the only time in his life he ever felt truly normal, like a real human being instead of a walking royal symbol. He cut out his oldest friends, the ones from before any of this mattered. Every single piece of his life was surrendered completely and willingly, because he honestly believed deep down in his soul that he had finally found the only person on earth who truly saw the real him. But, according to author Tom Bower, the very woman he handed his entire life to had sat in a quiet room days before their first meeting, carefully analysing exactly which version of herself would trigger those deep feelings. Harry admitted that after just one date, he already knew she was the one. He spoke like someone who had just witnessed a literal miracle. Tom Bower's deep research claims it was a cold, calculated blueprint, and this is the part that gets truly tragic instead of just sad. Harry cannot possibly protect his marriage without validating exactly what Bower alleges. Every single time he tells people that first date was magic, basically he is describing the absolute precision of what was done to him. Every time he claims it was fate, he just confirms it was actually a calculated craft. He is the ultimate proof, the most heartbroken witness in this entire saga. The devastating portrait Tom Bower painted only gets more accurate the faster she tries to run away from it. And somewhere behind that forced smile and her next highly polished public statement, that cold truth sits completely still, heavy, permanent, and entirely hers.